have a good amount of people. Hello, everyone. I guess we can probably start the community call. People will join over time if needed. So yeah, welcome. Brooklyn, as Philippe mentioned, Brooklyn is not here for this community call today. She's been on vacation for the past 2 weeks. So today we will more discuss, chat about, well, any question you might have regarding UCAN. Philippe here will, and Brian will be happy to talk about what we have on our side going on. And yeah, on my side, I just have something to show you because we have 2 suggestions for an icon for UCANs. So I'll just share the link in the chat. And we need your help to decide on which one we want, we will keep. So there are 2 options. There's one with a broken line style, and the inside is blank, while the other option is filled in black. Yeah, let us know what you think. You can comment in the post I just sent. Give us your thoughts. And yeah. And other than that, I would like to mention that the Go UCAN library, so is the first implementation of UCAN that we have outside of Fission by B5. And we've heard that some people are interested in to having a up-to-date. So what we'd like to do is for you to let us know if you're interested in using a Go UCAN library, and what do you want to use it for. And if you're interested in doing the development work or maintenance work on this library, just let us know as well. We have a post discussion for this too in the UCAN working group. So I'll post it here in the chat. And yeah, just feel free to drop a comment in there, and we'll be able to go further with that. All right, and these were my updates on that. Well, I guess it's just chatting time. So yeah, does anyone have any topic they'd like to kickstart with?
Yeah, I do. I read through the invocation spec, and I'd like to see an example where there's more than just the one resource. One with maybe an additional input parameter and a return value to see what the spec looks like there, because I'm concerned about the way you're using the identifier to tell which resource instead of using the capability itself. And,
I see.
And I think when you'll see what I'm concerned about once there's more than a single parameter involved in the invocation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would need to brush up on the details of the invocation.
They gotta talk. Shush. Shush.
Was that intentional? Probably. Yeah,
I
probably
think
not. Yeah, I need to brush up on the details of the invocation spec, but it's probably best if you have some concerns or something to create an issue.
I have. That's on the issues, and you know, the discussion sort of petered out, but my comments are exactly the same. The issue is when you designate the object in one place and apply and attach the capability somewhere else, you're getting very close to separating designation from authorization. And when there's only a single parameter, there's no way to get confused about which authorization goes with which argument. But as soon as you have multiples, you can see that there's a possibility of confusion. I mean, in particular, if I have 2 arguments that refer to the same object but with different permissions, you could imagine that some way of doing the invocation could cause confusion.
Oh, so that's not on the invocation spec, but the issue is somewhere else?
No, it's in the invocation spec. In the invocation spec, I can't. I have to find the my tab that has it open. But when you invoke, there's a specification of the object, and then in another place there's the authorization, and also the proof. And if there's only one argument, it's obvious that the designation is associated with that authorization. Now include more arguments, and how do you make sure that they're connected properly?
Oh, so that's in the section of the UCAN main spec on
That's
invocation.
Right. On invocation, exactly. And the only example there is a single argument, the object that you're invoking. But I may want to pass a parameter that isn't even controlled by the same resource server. So there I have to do a delegation when I specify that parameter, and what does that look like, and on and on. And these are things that are all missed with this very simple use case.
Okay, I would need some more looking into this. I know that Gozala, so Irakli, that is looking into the invocation spec for DAG house, and so perhaps that's unfortunately something best to talk to them about, but they are unfortunately not here. So I'm sorry, I can help.
All right. I had this paper, solving the transitive access problem, and that involved 3 parameters, and it was the simplest example I could come up with that covered all the risks and hazards that I could think of. And it involved 3 parameters, but even seeing 2 would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the issue I wanted to raise, and it's sitting there in the issues. One other thing, Brooklyn told me to join the Discord, and I tried, and it failed. So I guess I need an invitation.
The Discord should be without invitation.
That's what she said, but it wouldn't let me join.
I just dropped an invitation in the chat.
Okay,
you should probably be able to use it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Brian, I think you had something else.
Yeah. I have a few just different miscellanea I wanted to share. First of all, Becky, our head of marketing at Fission, did a refresh on the community page on ucan.xyz. And so I'll put that in chat. Basically, it's adding different blog posts that have sort of examples of how to use UCAN, the UCAN.lol UCAN adventure game, some talks that Brooklyn has given, and also an interview with James, and just whatever, a few more resources to get people oriented towards using UCAN that have been added to the site. One other thing we did is we have a section for libraries. Earlier, Bastian mentioned that GoUCAN, we're looking for a maintainer, looking for people who want to work on it. On the UCAN community site, we've removed any implementations that are not actively maintained. So right now there's just the Rust, TypeScript, and the IPLD UCAN, the JSTag UCAN library that are listed there. RSUCAN is nearing a 0.10 release, which will be the first library to implement 0.10. In chat in the UCAN Discord, Chris had mentioned that the one sort of feature that's missing is the UCAN : URI scheme to replace as and my. And then he wanted some just extra confirmation that it's implemented correctly. And so at Fission, we're working on I'm working on a fixture generator that will, get us a bunch of just, a big blob of JSON with a bunch of tokens that can be validated against, and some examples where you're given some key material and you need to create tokens. So once I have that in place, I think this is it's going to be generated with RSUCAN, so it's a little self-referential. And I think essentially we need to just kind of hand check those unless someone has ideas of what we could do otherwise. Go ahead.
We've also got an implementation in Rust. We've got some test vectors we generated, so we can actually we generated them because similarly, like we were looking for test vectors. So I'd be happy to trade tests. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. That would be fantastic. Do you have the repo where your implementation is?
Yes, currently it's in a PR, but it is right here. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, no, that would be great. I will take a look at that, and once we have our our set of fixtures, then I'll let you know, or maybe I'll make a comment on that issue or something like that. Or I think you're in the UCAN Discord as well, right?
I'm not, but I will be in at the end of this meeting, I'm sure. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. So yeah, once we have a good set of fixtures that we're all aligned on, then we can run those through RS UCAN, and the implementation should be mostly complete with the UCAN URI scheme added. Another little actually, Charles, one more question about your implementation. Is it sort of a general purpose that other people can use, or is it tied to a specific library and ecosystem?
It is intended to be general purpose so that anyone can use it. It is somewhat integrated with our array of libraries to do with DIDs and stuff. So yeah. Because it depends on some traits that we define in a separate crate. Yeah.
Would you be interested in listing it on the UCAN community site?
Yes, very much so. Yes.
Okay, great. I'll put in a link for that repository if you don't have it already, and just make a pull request. Feel free to ping me begins if you have any questions on like how to add that into the site. Yeah, that's the repo. Yeah, thank you. And let's see here, what were the other things? Oh yeah, I've started going around adding little badges to the various different implementations so that they make it clear which version of UCAN they support, like just right at the top of the README. As an example, looking for the TS UCAN site. As an example, you can take a look at the top of this TS UCAN repo. In the README, there's just a little badge that says it currently supports UCAN at 0.8.1. And this is just so folks can see kind of what they're getting into with the library, and will it have a version of UCAN that's interoperable with the other libraries. I don't think we'll make it a hard requirement or anything for like supported libraries, but just useful bit of info for users. And I think that's all. I think that's all the updates I had.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah,
We have
I don't. Is there anything else? Do people have anything else to? Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
I was talking with Brooklyn in the CASA Discord about some things. Essentially, it's not explicitly written in the spec right now, as far as I remember. I'm not looking at it right now, but should UCANs are JWT, are valid JWTs, but the entries in the header, there should only be two entries, right? Just type is JWT and algorithm for the signature, and that's it, right?
Also UCV for the UCAN version.
I think that's been moved to the body. Or
possible. Actually, yeah, it's just the algorithm and type ALG TYP. And the the UCAN version has been moved to the body, to the payload.
okay. It should be tightly restricted to not include like anything that includes any extra header fields. Is that not a valid UCAN?
No, I wouldn't say so. I like the one restriction we have is that the ALG must not be none, but other than that, there's no restriction on the header. So in theory, there could be other fields in there, or I don't know. Should it be up to the implementation if other fields are allowed or not? I would say a UCAN that has those two header fields and ALG is not none is a valid UCAN.
But if there are extra fields there, then they should be ignorable in terms of validating the UCAN, right? So they're optional. So you could have, for example, a description. But if you don't know what description means, you should be able to validate the UCAN, even if description is there. Is that the goal?
This train of thought originated from the Cacao group, which is canonicalizing UCANs into IPLD. If you look at a Cacao in a what's it called, the CBOR investigate inspector.
IPLD CBOR inspector.
Yeah, it'll look very much like a UCAN. The question is, like, if there are header fields in a UCAN, how do we transliterate them into the Cacao? This is a conversation we had in the Discord in CASA. So I was just wondering if where we draw the line there. Additional, just to tie this up, additional things were, expiration dates, timestamps, allowed to be fractional. The JWT spec says they can be floats, but I suspect that very few people actually use them that way.
Yeah, I think current implementations don't assume that they are floats. If I'm correct, let me see.
I think it's sensible to just say that they should just be seconds.
Yeah.
It looks like the payload section on the spec says integer or null for expiration, for example.
Yeah, perfect. But yeah, ultimately this is related to canonicalization into an IPLD format.
Yeah. I would say, like, those are just different things, right? There's UCANs, there's JWTs, there's JWTs which are valid UCANs, and then there's turning JWTs into IPLD that is valid UCAN IPLD. And essentially, not every JWT that is a valid UCAN can be turned into UCAN IPLD losslessly. So yeah, you end up needing to choose as a developer like what you want to do.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
No problem. And yeah, I just looked at the Rust implementation. It assumes a U64 for the time. If I see it, if I have the right place.
Yeah, and also the IPLD schema in the UCAN IPLD is int. So.
All right. Yeah.
So is that int 32, int 16, int 64?
Good question.
Yeah, IPLD is weird. I think in theory that's any integer, like any positive integer.
I think so.
It can be like you can technically encode a big integer in IPLD, but in practice, for example, the Rust implementation of libIPLD will at maximum assume an I128, so 128 bits of integer.
Because it matters if you're specifying a big one and the receiving side can only use a smaller one.
Sure. The thing is, if you end up like it's a timestamp in seconds, so anything beyond 32 bits, I think, is astronomically far away. So should be okay, but don't quote me on that.
Not our problem today.
Well, lots of vulnerabilities come in things that should be okay. People find ways to exploit the inconsistency, and so I think it's important to know.
Fair enough. Yeah, like it's a good point to raise. If different implementations accept different bit sizes in those integers, yeah.
So in the system I built, that was actually negotiated on the first handshake. Things like integer size, just to make sure that there was no confusion.
Yeah, I think in UCAN land, because we don't have interactivity often between services that accept UCANs and validate them, we end up not being able to do negotiation that well. So I guess it is just going to be possible that some UCANs are deemed valid by one service versus another.
And that's perfectly fine, but I think the specification of integer must include what integer size it is, then it's not valid if you can't handle that integer size and you just reject it. I think it's okay for one service to reject a UCAN that another instance of the same service accepts, but it's not okay to have confusion over integer size.
Yeah.
Should be more strict on that type.
Yeah.
We can be more strict on that, yeah.
Or you could just say it's int 64, end of story, everybody deal with it. If you have a 16-bit machine, use a big int on your machine.
Yes, that is one option, of course. I guess most implementations, though, like, is it a bad thing if one implementation rejects a UCAN where the integer is too big for that particular implementation versus another implementation which accepts it? As long as those implementations are out early enough, it should be fine. I'm saying should too much, maybe.
I assume that the attacker is smarter than me, and if there's a should be okay, the attacker will find a way to exploit it. And so I try to avoid saying this should be okay.
Yeah, there's another argument to be made about limiting integer size to 53 bits, because that's the safe integer size for JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's maybe for another discussion and an issue in the UCAN spec, perhaps.
Yes.
A related and probably a little bit frustrating question. What about negative timestamps? Not before 1960 is a valid not before time for all UCANs, even though the spec is written, much later.
After that timestamp, yeah.
Is that something we even want to account for, or should we just say that don't use negative numbers here because there's no way you could have had a UCAN that originated from before 1970, because it just doesn't make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, right? Not allowing negative numbers. Again, maybe something to get more specific on. Perhaps a good kind of thing to do before going 1.0 with UCAN. So let's create an issue and talk about that. I would say I'm erring on the side, like, why accept negative timestamps? I don't personally see a reason.
Yeah,
doesn't seem useful until we have it.
Yeah. So instead of integer, the spec should just say unsigned 64-bit integer. Is that good enough?
Perhaps. perhaps also 53 bits, who knows?
Yeah, but decide on one and that's it. And
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
As unsigned.
Yeah, we're putting bounds on, like, UCAN's a subset of JWTs. We're putting strict bounds on what subset.
Right. But I think we agree that integer is not enough, right?
Yes, it could be better.
Okay, do we have anything else? We have some people who, yeah,
Hi.
maybe Jiang, yeah.
Hi, I'm Jiang, and I'm from Social Layer Protocol. And I met Brian at the DWeb camp at California last month. I'm living in China, and I'm also building DWeb stuff and Web3 related stuff. Just say hi and following up the development of UCAN, and yeah, it's great. Okay, and it's very a great discussion tonight about the protocol and the specs. Yeah, and also some friends and I will also be organizing. We are planning to organizing hacker house, a DWeb hacker house in Istanbul in November this year, because there would be Ethereum Dev Connect conference. Yeah, so yeah, and also I think the object capability and UCAN would be great topic for this hack house. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds great. I've heard about you from the side. I've seen Brian talk about that. Yeah, that sounds awesome. I think, or a couple of people at Fission are already thinking / talking about that DWeb camp. No, sorry, the Istanbul hacker house. Yeah.
Wow. Then we can have a hacker week there. Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
I have another topic, like kind of for the discussion. So related to passkeys, we're doing some work on that. Kind of pause for the moment. I'm gonna kind of go back to it. But in the meantime, talk to some guys in ceramic. Kind of, I think, trying to add support for passkeys or hardware keys. So one of the things that always comes up in these discussions, I even think even here we talked a little bit about it, is kind of the way to handle passkeys. And I think it kind of comes down to kind of the threat model that the use case has. So what I'm talking about is, like, there's several options to passkeys. Like, there's one more kind of troublesome, and the other two are way simpler, but also have some cons, because like support for those in the environments and the browsers and the mobile OSs and whatnot. So specifically, without going into these other ones that don't have support yet, like all over the place, the one that we have is just the signature from the passkey. The problem with the signature from the passkey is that we can't just throw in the UCAN and ask the passkey to sign it, because it will sign it, but it will add a bunch of other data in there and sign everything. So the solution is kind of build up a new signature type for UCANs, like the passkey signature UCAN spec or something, to account for that. Maybe we embed the information, because it's kind of public, inside the UCAN, and then the validators can kind of deal with it. So this approach has one big advantage. So the signature is made by the hardware key, the authenticator itself. So there's no the secrets don't ever come out of it, right? The secret elements. We only get the signature out. The other methods that are way simpler, that have like support issues, we need to extract the secrets. We need to put it into memory, like in the browser thread. It needs to be there. We need to deal with it and sign stuff. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about like this threat model here? Do you think it's okay to deal with this stuff? Like we pull it out, do some signatures, throw it away, or should we focus way more on the first option where it's always inside the secure element and we only get the signature out, but we need to deal with the extra information, and we need to create a new signature type. Just wondering about your thoughts, because it's always comes up in these discussions, and we need to kind of start forming an opinion around this.
I think Alan was first.
Yeah, so the problem with using the passkey is that every UCAN would then be signed by the same key. And we found there are advantages to use one-off keys for each key pairs for each capability, for each certificate. I don't know, you could do that within the secure element, but then you're not using the passkey per se. I think that's something that you need to consider is I ask you for a capability, you ask me for a public key, and you issue the UCAN to the public key I give you. And I will use a different key pair for every UCAN. And I think that has a number of advantages over a single key for all my UCANs.
Exactly. I agree with that. So one of the ways that we kind of dealing with that specifically in Fission is we call it like the passkey is kind of the identifier of a user. The user can have multiple ones from multiple origins, like different apps and things like that. And we can always use it, the identifier, one single time. So we delegate to the local agent, what we call the agent, which would be the app itself, or the CLI, or the mobile app. We only do it one time. Like the agent requests some capabilities. We go into this identifier that could be a passkey or a wallet or something. In this case, passkey, and we only do it that time. After that, it works mostly as you were describing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. When you give out a capability, you need some reason to do it, and having the identifier of the party you're giving it to is one of those reasons. I mean, another reason might be I gave you money, but certainly that's perfectly fine. But the individual capabilities issued to independently generated keys are the approach I prefer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's basically just possible by that architecture we're doing, right? Passkey to some ephemeral keys or some more local keys, and then you can, in theory, just have a single key pair for every capability you own.
Yeah,
exactly.
And you can, I programmed a TPM. We had a protocol a number of years ago where we programmed a TPM and generated the keys within the TPM. So even though you're using individual key pairs, they never leave the secure element.
Yep.
Exactly.
It's a pain.
Coming back to exactly, but coming back to what I started with is this distinction from the options we have with passkeys. So the first one, it's inside the secure element, but we need to create kind of a new UCAN signature type. The other one, it uses a passkey extension, and we only get like the like secret from it. And we can there's a mechanism to rotate several secrets in there, but we need to take it out and do the signature on the outside. Here, I think I'm really want to be specific to your opinions on these two options. Are we okay with one, the easier one, but it's a little bit insecure? The other one is more complicated because we need a new signature. but it's more secure. What are the trade-offs? What are your balance here?
So if you're using a different key pair for every capability, if the private key gets exposed, you've only risked a single capability. So
Right,
in general, that's okay, but sometimes it's a very powerful capability. And so maybe you make the judgment on which one you use based on the risk. But now you got to implement both.
Exactly.
And also,
yeah,
Charles, you had your hand up. I want to let you before I do.
We've been thinking about this a bunch because we're trying to do WebAuthn for UCANs. So I think you're referring to the PRF extension in WebAuthn to derive ultimately, there's a conflict between the design goal of UCANs to be valid JWTs and the way the WebAuthn creates signatures from the authenticator if you're just using plain WebAuthn signatures. That's unresolvable if you want to have both. You can't have both ultimately, unfortunately. We talked about a few ways, and yeah, Hugo just linked the Odd SDK, which I believe uses the PRF extension. And we are right now going with the PRF extension because it doesn't require us to define a whole bunch of new logic. In the Cacao group, we talked about Cacao uses something called a varsig, where you can encode a bunch of extra information before the signature, like concatenated with the signature, basically to help you verify it, do some data transforms and stuff, which helps. But ultimately, JWTs won't let you do this, and it's I'm not sure what to say really. It's just it's a conceptual difference, irreconcilable difference, unfortunately.
It kind of is. If we want to keep the stricter relationship with JWTs, I definitely agree.
Yeah, I would be in favor of, for example, header entries containing this extra client data and authenticated data and stuff. And then, doing something around that because the COSE algorithms from WebAuthn corresponds basically one-to-one with the ALG field as well. So we can do some stuff there. Then there'll be kind of a flag somewhere that you'll have to check that says, is this like a regular JWT signature or is it a WebAuthn created signature and we should do this transform when we verify the signature.
That's a good point, right? So do we change the algorithm property in the JWT to something different? Just to indicate that this is the normal algorithm, but the passkey version, which needs some other extra logic.
It's tricky because we'll need another ALG field again because there's an ALG for the WebAuthn for the authenticator itself. But also we don't want to have that be ambiguous where it's like sometimes this ALG means do it the normal way and sometimes it means do it the WebAuthn way. We didn't come to a good conclusion, so we just said for now we'll do PRF, even though it is not supported on most desktop browsers.
And I'm going to update the matrix in this issue soon enough, but it's getting better. There's some indications that the support is going to improve a lot in a much shorter time than I was expecting. So I see some good news there.
Oh, that's good, because it's been tough to test on macOS for me. But yeah, I would be, very much in favor of having some way to do it in a UCAN native way, to do direct WebAuthn signatures. Our fallback was to, through the CASA group, define a varsig type which does WebAuthn, and we wouldn't be signing over a UCAN, we'd be signing over like a, essentially a Cacao without the signature field, which would be canonicalized. Yeah, I'm open to any suggestions, really.
I think that was what Hugo was referring to, kind of like a varsig, where in the signature, what you add is all of the fields in the data that WebAuthn ends up signing, and then a validator knows how to take the signature and reconstruct that thing that WebAuthn usually signs. Yeah.
So now, Charles, assuming like you talked about the PRF, on that side of the equation, like the more let's call it insecure because the secret comes out. There's two options more. There's two other options, right? So there's PRF. There's the large blob one, which is kind of a small storage thingy that you can read and write. So you can create the secret yourself, just write it there. And there's the third option, which came like last week, I think, in a conversation that I didn't think through completely, but it seems to have the same threat model. But I leave it for you guys to kind of help out discovering this. So first, have you tried large blob? And the third option is, what's the difference between PRF and large blob, which for me have the same threat model, and the third, which is if we use what's the name of the thing, the challenge, a static challenge to sign something and use that as a secret, because it still requires human verification, user verification, presence verification, to get the same signature out of the passkey. Does that have the same threat model than the other two, PRF and large blob?
The resulting signature will still be present in the same program context as the PRF results, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It will be unique each time WebAuthn ceremony occurs because of the client data and all the other information provided as part of the WebAuthn authentication ceremony.
Oh, hold on. It will be unique every time. It shouldn't. If it's the same challenge, the signatures, it should be the same.
The signature is not made only over the challenge, but also over data provided by the relying party and the authenticator itself.
Yeah, but those are the same for the same passkey always. So client data plus authenticator data should always be the same.
Okay, so if the relying party provides the identical data each time, then it should result. Then yeah, it should result in an identical signature. I
so
don't know.
Can we use that as the seed, as the secret, to create a keeper, and avoid the support gaps from PRF and other extensions?
Conceptually, I think yes. Security-wise, it'll be equally the same as PRF or large blob. But in principle, that should be fine. I'd have to read more closely through the FIDO stuff. Yeah. I thought that I can be mistaken. I thought that the authenticated data could be different at any time, essentially, and change the result of the signature.
There's one thing very weird that happens in Chrome only. The client data that comes out of it sometimes includes an extra field in there just to give like a notice. It's literally like built by Chrome because it has like the Google short link in there just to give the users some information about WebAuthn and passkeys. And that really screws this up. I don't know why that happens, but we can figure out, but that would make a new signature. But that shouldn't happen. I don't know why they do that, but yeah.
I guess the broader caveat there is that we may not be able to depend on the implementations to always maintain an identical input.
Right.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. WebAuthn is a little bit frustrating.
It is.
I see why they've made many of the decisions they've made, and I understand that. It's just that in this context, it is a little bit annoying. Yeah, there was some issue on the browser crypto keys GitHub to allow that API to be hardware backed. But I don't think it will go anywhere because the authenticator manufacturers have their own concerns around security and functionality, which they brought into WebAuthn. So yeah.
And as you kind of do more research and whatnot, feel free to kind of help out keeping up a matrix of support. I think that's useful for the broader ecosystem to have somewhere. It took me a while to build this on my own, so I expect other developers to find it hard to understand the support for these extensions. So yeah,
I appreciate being able to already have being able to read through what you've made. That actually was very helpful. Thanks. Yeah, when we get our PRF version up and running, it'll be public by default. And in the Cacao group, I think we probably will move forward with a VARSIG definition for this stuff. And I made an issue on the UCAN GitHub a couple of weeks ago about direct WebAuthn signatures. And ultimately, the conclusion was Brooklyn informing me about your work already with PRF. Because, yeah, this design difference with JWT signatures and WebAuthn is difficult to get over ultimately.
yeah, but I agree. We should have some way to have both options and let the developer choose which one is best for their use case. Just like as you said, the native or basic WebAuthn signature is a bit harder to reconcile with JWTs.
Yeah, and personally, I would rather do this in UCAN land instead of Cacao land, because that really we just use Cacaos because we use Siwi signing with Ethereum. But preferably UCANs would be the main focus.
Yeah, I think if I read Brooke's comment there correctly, we're still not against having like specific VARSIG support in the UCAN spec or somewhere around the UCANiverse, somewhere in UCAN working group at least. And so maybe that ends up happening. I don't know, but
maybe even an ALG type, which is just VARSIG, and then because in the VARSIG it describes like what key type it is and all that extra information.
Yeah, I think this is just something that I guess we need to discuss this and then find people who would be happy to write this up and implement it. But it seems like you want to implement that anyways, right? You're planning on adding VARSIG support on some level for passkeys.
We would like to.
Okay.
For the sake of time, we've gone with PRF, but it's kind of hard to demonstrate that because of the limitations of different platforms.
Yes.
So yeah, ultimately, I think the goal would be to have direct WebAuthn signatures.
Okay. Yeah.
I think along with Ceramic, we'd be happy to define something like that.
Awesome.
Because of the origin of VARSIG, I suspect it would happen in the CASA group, because that's where that's defined. But yeah, we can bring updates, and Joel is usually here as well.
On the UCAN side, like the UCAN IPLD spec should easily kind of in basically the same, because there's fastseek there already too, so should be easy enough, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking though, like libraries like RSUCAN, for example, should probably at some point get passkey support or passkey validation support at least, right? Too. So
the thing is, like, it's always like IPLD or JWT.
Yeah, that's the thing. If we added like an algorithm type that is something like varsig, in UCAN,
okay, I see.
Then
so
we could,
instead of being specific for passkeys, you want to throw in varsig as an algorithm in JWT and just be done with it. Serves all purposes.
Perhaps, I don't know. Like that would be one way that would work. But I see that we're stacking, like creating a stack of things here, right? JWT, varsig, passkeys, something to think about though.
Yes.
Yeah, for new developers discovering UCAN, them being plain JWTs is a very attractive thing, because it's, if you know JWTs, you immediately understand the security properties of a UCAN in terms of signatures. Adding varsig does introduce a bunch of extra complexity, but it's kind of a trapdoor. Like, you know, it is a plain JWT unless the alg says varsig, and then, you know, we open this trapdoor and it can be many other validation types. And new developers entering the space, you know, it's an incremental learning process. So.
It looks like we have a question in the chat. What's varsig?
I was trying to find the link. Yeah, just put the link in the chat.
It's a spec for representing many different kinds of signatures that may have associated data that's not represented in the actual payload that gets presented at verification time. Yeah, it's kind of to cover every base, sort of. It's I'd say infinitely flexible. Yeah.
If you're familiar with multi-formats, it's somewhat like a multi-format for signatures, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, we are nearing the end of the community call. Do we have other questions? Maybe Zachary and Bartholomew, just.
I did put in the chat the link to the Brooklyn AI, super AI. So you can share that.
Oh,
with
nice. Thank you so much. Or maybe Joshua, if you have anything. I guess not. Okay. Well, thank you everyone then. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you next month for the next edition of the community call.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.